It's another Q&A edition of Optimal Health Daily, episode 1512, and I'm Dr. Neil, your host of the show. Welcome back to another Friday show where I answer your questions. On all the other days, I read health and fitness blogs to you, kind of like an ongoing audiobook, with permission from the authors, of course. Now, if you're wondering about me and my background and my credentials, definitely check out the first Q&A episode of October. That's where I go into more details about that. Oh, and to save time, I'll let you know how you can send in your own question at the end of the show. So for now, let's go ahead and jump right in and hear today's audio question as we optimize your life.
Hi, I'm just wondering about gut health for parasites. I've had a little girl and she woke up one night with what's known as sulfur burps, like eggy burps. And then we sent her for testing and she's had a parasite come back in a sample. She's had 3 weeks of antibiotics, but that's failed to really clear it 100%. It has helped it, but it's not 100% gone. So I'd love to know your thoughts on with gut health and not getting these parasites. Thanks.
Thank you so much for taking the time to send me your question. I'm so sorry to hear your daughter has been dealing with this illness. Please know I am sending healing thoughts. Now, based on the symptoms described, my best guess is that your daughter is suffering from a parasite known as Giardia. A fancy way of saying this is that your daughter is suffering from Giardiasis. The giveaway was those sulfur or eggy burps you described. Those are pretty classic symptoms of Gerodiasis. Now, it turns out that this Giardia parasite is really common throughout the world. Oh, I should mention first what a parasite is. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, a parasite is actually a living thing that lives in another living thing. So it would be like a microscopic worm living inside a human. Both are living things, right? Now, the parasite itself is unique because it uses its host, the other bigger living thing, to supply it with food and nutrients in order to survive. So it basically uses the host to keep itself alive. Now, again, these parasites are often microscopic. We can't see them with the naked eye, but some are larger or can grow to be larger to the point where they can be seen without fancy equipment like a microscope. In the case of the Giardia parasite, it's microscopic, so we can't see it with our naked eyes, and it likes to live in water. So we're talking about streams, rivers, ponds, lakes, and yes, even public swimming pools. Now, if drinking water comes from a well and it's not treated before it's consumed, that could also be a source of the Giardia parasite. And if that weren't enough, our foods could also be a source. Oh, and the parasite can be spread from person to person. People may infect others without even realizing that they have the parasite, because there are some that have the parasite in their bodies but don't ever experience symptoms, so they just don't know they have it. Now, before I make every single listener nervous, I should mention that Gerodiasis is not nearly as contagious as, say, COVID-19, but it still can be transmitted through poor hygiene practices, which I'll explain in a moment. So, it's possible that your daughter could have contracted the parasite from any number of sources. Children, in general, are more likely to become infected. This is because of a combination of more exposure and hygiene. Children are just more likely to be hanging around with other children that may also have it, but aren't experiencing any symptoms. And let's face it, children are less likely to wash their hands before touching their mouth or before they eat. Which brings me to preventing this type of infection. According to the Mayo Clinic, the best ways to prevent Giardiasis is to 1. Wash our hands before touching our face or eating. Scrubbing hands using soap and water for 20 to 30 seconds should do the trick. Reciting the alphabet while washing our hands is a good way to make sure we're washing our hands for those 20 to 30 seconds. Once you get to the letter Z, you're done. 2. Make sure that drinking water is safe. This is particularly important when traveling to non-industrialized countries. Same goes for camping. It's usually not a good idea to drink directly from streams, rivers, ponds, and lakes without making sure that the water is purified first. Now, if traveling to a non-industrialized country where the water may not be safe to drink from the tap, buy bottled water and never ask for ice in your drinks. 3. When using a public swimming pool or when swimming in a lake, try not to drink any of the water. Giardia can survive in these environments. That's why the signs at public swimming pools often say that if you've recently experienced diarrhea, do not enter the water. And 4, wash your fresh produce. In most industrialized countries, the food supply is very safe, but it couldn't hurt to go ahead and wash fresh produce before consuming it. If you're traveling to a country that may not have fresh drinking water available, it may not be a good idea to eat fresh produce while visiting. Instead, eat only cooked vegetables and canned fruit. Okay, so what about the treatments for this parasite? Antibiotics are the most common treatment, but unfortunately, they don't always work. And even if they do work, people may continue to experience unpleasant gastrointestinal symptoms even after the parasite is long gone. I found a study that looked at why this happens, and unfortunately, their results were inconclusive, meaning they weren't sure why some people experienced symptoms long after their treatments. But the good news was the authors of the study did find that most people eventually did start feeling better on their own. It just took them longer than expected. So my recommendation would be sure that you and your daughter stay in touch with her doctor. If one antibiotic didn't do the trick, there are others that can be tried. But the doctor is going to know the best course of action to take and will help prevent any complications that can occur over time, like nutrient deficiencies or dehydration. I imagine that with time, your daughter will feel better, and this will all be a distant memory soon. Thank you again so much for taking the time to send in your audio question. And if you want to send your questions in, you can email them to health@oldpodcast.com. That's health@oldpodcast.com. Or if you want your voice played on the show, just like today's caller did, come by oldpodcast.com/ask. Lastly, you can do it the old-fashioned way and call in your question. The number is 61 I love OHD. All right, that'll do it for today. Thank you so much for listening every day. Thank you for listening all the way through, and I'll see you back here tomorrow where your optimal life awaits.